Welcome to Weird Games and Weirder People, a podcast about role-playing games and the weird, wonderful people behind them. Hello Weirdos! This is Diogo Nogueira and today you're gonna listen to a chat I had with Joey Royale. If you don't know Joey Royale, he's internet famous for his show on Goodman Games Twitch called Joey Royale Pizza Party, where he talks about gaming and even philosophy and talks about the weird stuff that is happening in the game and the games he's playing, and he has guests. I had been there. It was really fun. We talked about the game we played at Gen Con and DCC in general. He's also the man behind Get Haunted Industries, where he publishes his stuff, his games, like the Weird Heroes of Public Access, a game about we talked about for a long while on the show, where he explores the weirdness in small town America and the weirdness in the mundane, which is a really big focus on his work. We talked about Ninja City, which was the game we played at Gen Con. We talked about religion. We talked about alcohol and other stuff that keeps him anxious and how he dealt with that. And we talked about weirdness in general in ourselves and especially in the mundane world we so often ignore. So please listen to it and let's get weird. Hey, hello Joey. Thanks so much for coming here. And first of all, I would like to thank you for the amazing game we had at Gen Con. It was great meeting you there. I had so much fun. And as we started talking, we started seeing how much we have in common, our interests, the weird stuff we like, and the weird stuff we think. And I thought to myself, oh, I have to talk to him at this new podcast. And I was just wanting to make, and I got back to Brazil. I started making them. So here are the famous Joey Royale. So if you can, like for people that are listening to this, can you introduce yourself, tell a little bit who you are, what you do, and why do people think you are weird?
Well, to begin, it's an honor to be on this show, but it's a great joy, even more so, to be with you, virtually or otherwise. I miss you very much, and the adventures we had at Gen Con continue to inspire me. So thank you very much. And who I am, I'm Joey Royale. I am I don't know, I'm all sorts of things. I'm a dad.
You're the person behind the Get Haunted press and the stuff you make.
Yeah. I'm the guy behind Get Haunted Industries. I love making zines around role-playing games. I love making music. I love playing games. I love being a dad and a husband. And I'm also an educator of children by day. So that's just the big meatball, all the ingredients that make up who I am. And they certainly have an influence on each other. They play off of each other all the time. So that's who I am. Some of my games that I've come out with, my first one was One of Us, which is a supplement for Dungeon Crawl Classics. I worked on that with Tim Deshane. That was our first project. And the tagline is, what is it? How does it go over there? One of Us. It's sideshow salvation in a dystopian dust bowl. So basically, you play a traveling carnival performer, traveling a post-apocalyptic United States. Basically, the bomb went off sometimes around the 1950s, and you go around in the service of the Madam, the mysterious leader of this carnival train, as you go around searching for relics. Then I had Darkest Dice, which is a very small thing. I took the original role-playing game and melted it down into a disguised as a religious track that were quite famous or infamous, as I say, the chick tracks around here in the 70s and 80s. I'm sure they went down there too. They've been translated into many languages.
Yeah, the Darkest Dungeon thing, right? Like
yes.
The kid that played and died in character, so they had to kill them on in real life.
Yeah.
Yeah,
yes.
that thing is famous.
Blackley.
And
So
role
then
players love it. That role players are like,
oh
oh,
yes.
we love this.
I mean, if I found that as a kid, I'd be buying a Dungeon Master's Guide in a second. So to me, it's a great advertisement.
Yeah.
And then I made Ninja City, which is a reskin of Dungeon Crawl Classics. It's a supplement where you play you and your friends play ninjas in a 80s VHS kind of world. And then finally, my ongoing project that really is my heart and soul is Weird Heroes of Public Access, which is a rules light game where you play a public access television host in a small town working on supernatural mysteries. And then I do a lot of other stuff, on the side. I do a lot of work with my man Brian Shutter, the Neon Lord of the Toxic Wasteland. We're always working on projects together, and that's where I'm at right now, Diogo.
Very nice. Your stuff is always inspiring. Like I played Ninja City at Gen Con with you, it was so fun. And as you were talking about creativity right before it got in the air, it's like that's one of the marks of creativity. Like we take something that's already there, like the rules, as you said, it's a reskin, but it's like with just some small tweaks, we reapplied the same thing to this over the top, fantastic ninja pop culture adventure game. It was so much fun and made me want to play ninja RPGs with my kids so much, and it was great. But one thing you forgot about to say is what thing people say, like, oh, what people think you are weird about, like, say, I don't
Sure.
know, do people
I've been
think you are weird because of some
Yeah,
reason?
they do, and I embrace it. And to me, it's never been an insult. I grew up weird. I grew up with very different interests than the kids around me. I was very small, very, very small for my age growing up. And I really didn't grow until I was about 17 at the end of my high school career. So my whole life, I was kind of removed from the norm from by my size, by my inability to be athletic, but also because of my interests. I have wonderful parents who I love deeply, and my father in particular is a creative type who's also I would consider strange. So growing up, he was a teacher, but he also had a gravestone business with my grandfather. So every Saturday, I would spend it in the cemetery, playing with my action figures. My father was also an original monster kid. He grew up with famous monsters of filmland and things like that. So very early on, he got me into very supported my hobby of monster movies as a kid and collecting Tales from the Crypt comics and famous monsters. And back then, those things were very hard to find. So immediately you're thrown into this strange world on top of being a strange kid. So that was always something that was my parents never tried to fit me into a peg. They taught me the very important skill though of how would I say, it has negative connotations now, but I guess you could call it code switching. Like, how do you maintain this weirdness and let it flower while still being productive in the general setting? And I think that was
Yeah,
a very important lesson to me, just
it
so I didn't
is.
become too removed.
I mean, I think everything in moderation is good. Like you don't want to be all weird too, because then nothing's normal. You don't have comparisons too. So I think the weird needs the normal. I think everyone else has both of these qualities in them, that both of these instincts to fit in with the tribe, because it's like an evolutional thing. But they also, each of us has this spark of being different or unique, or this specific interests that speak to us in some levels. Sometimes we don't even understand, and back then, weird would have like bad connotations, because it is like genetic. We want to survive, we want to fit in, and so everybody that didn't fit in, people would close in on them and call them weird because they wouldn't fit in, and we would always want to be accepted, right? Nowadays, always this focus on being accepted of yourself, of how we are different, and celebrating everybody's difference. But a few years ago, there was nothing like this, and we were growing up. I don't think
Sure.
there was like this. So weird was this kind of bad, but we couldn't help being weird. Like some people couldn't. Like as you said, your grandfather were artists too. So I think all artists has to have some weird side stronger, because you create something out of nothing, almost like a god. And
Sure.
most people don't understand this. Art is sometimes very misunderstood, right? And I think it's naturally weird for itself. So I don't know.
And to me, it's also a mode of communication. But I
Yeah,
grew up a
expression,
very,
right?
yes, but I grew up a very angry teenager. And I think that's normal. Many of us were angry goths or something, like punks and all that. But that's when as we spoke about, as you put, the balance, it became imbalanced. I was holding on to the weirdness so much in rebellion against the normalcy of what I saw, that I became too insulated, and it came out in the form of anger. Why is everybody, God forbid, then you get Catcher in the Rye in your hands, and everybody's a phony, and this and that, and nobody understands me. I'm frustrated. But that burned me out very quickly, and I did not get as much. I wasn't feeling the joy I felt when I was younger, where I didn't care about that, where I just ate all this beautiful, delicious media and fun stuff that was coming to me. So it really wasn't until I got into music where I realized the importance of reciprocity when it comes to art, the creating and giving, and seeing how it comes back to you, how it's reinterpreted, and your art then becomes somebody else's. And I think that took a lot of me letting go to see how the art develops, and how an idea really comes to beautiful fruition when it can be consumed by the public. So you have to be a little bit, in my mind, in order for me to enjoy the world of art, I have to be somewhat of a showman and put on a show and give it to people, and then see how it's received and how it comes back, like a band to an audience relationship.
Yeah, I think you learn a lot from doing that. I mean, sometimes as we're beginning, like we're afraid to show stuff. Sometimes people are afraid they're gonna steal their ideas or something.
Sure.
And I always say like ideas are like the least valuable things, like the execution is like everything, because I have tons and tons of books of ideas, and they will never become anything if I don't put my ass down on the chair and just do them. But yeah, it's something incredible, like to make something and to share. It's how you experience it too, because you only be able to see how, especially things like we do, we make RPGs, and RPGs are like printed and people play them, so you have to finish and show to other people for it to reach its end of its life, like the life cycle of a game. It needs to be played, so we have to show to people. And I can say fairly that my work I began like 2016 until now, everything I've made, I think all my work today is better than the work I did previously. I always learning, I always like reading new stuff and playing new stuff, and I think that's very, very important too.
I think it's important to go back to those old projects too. I mean,
Oh
that could
yeah,
be difficult. As proud as
yeah.
we were when they came out, it can be very difficult to revisit some of those early works and be honest with us. It's important also, yes, you'll cringe a little bit. Oh my God, I can't believe I let that slip through, or how I worded that, or I didn't, I was such a different person then.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's so important to go back and just get a little whiff, that little scent of the excitement, of the
Oh yeah.
innocence of those early
Yeah.
projects, the hope you
Yeah.
had for those, the
They're
ideas you
much
had,
more innocent for sure. Yeah. Yeah.
and unconstrained by all the other things. Is this going to sell, or is that, like all the things that you learn as you grow up
Yeah.
in the project,
Yeah. It's very important to reconnect to that, because
Yeah.
you can get really into this thing that this has to succeed, this has to find a public. I don't
Yes.
have many followers on this project, this is not working. And you get into this meta of creation, like of anxiety about the future thing that is not even done yet. So I've been working a lot to fall in love again with the process, with just making stuff, and try to worry less about if this is going to publish or if it's gonna sell or anything. I'm just trying to get things done, you know.
I've had the greatest success with the projects that just came out spontaneously that I had to get down on paper, and those were good because I did not consider the perspective of the outside world, that they were very internal and very personal. I didn't consider if they're going to sell. I didn't consider, is this going to be a successful Kickstarter? All I thought about is, damn it, I love this idea so much. I have to put this on paper and I have to print it. And if somebody else loves it, fine.
Yeah, that's the secret. At least for me, I'm gonna get back in that mentality when I had to did Solar Blades and Dark Streets and everything.
Yes.
Like just make something for myself and get it out there when it's done. Can I ask you, like, for you, how would you define weird? Like, what is weird for you, and why are you like attracted to it?
That is a question that I've never been asked before, and I want to make sure I answer this succinctly because it is the cornerstone of basically everything I've been created or have created. So what is weird to me? Anything that includes an innocence and a fantasy. Like, so for let me try to paint this. It's hard to put it. Let me try with an example. So the weird, I find the greatest weirdness comes from the most mundane things. I intentionally drive behind the supermarket when I come home sometimes when it's dark out. The back of a supermarket to me is so mundane, but it's so weird to me because it's the lurking unknown amongst the normalcy. There's all these doors that you never see open or close. There's all these painted over signs. So there's just your brain starts going and there's a natural mystery from it. So I guess weird is when you mentally, either intentionally or out of boredom or out of artistry, you start to let the kite string out a little bit too far, that it starts to wobble in the wind. You let your mind go a little bit, and pretty soon all the atoms and the particles that were so structured and stuck together start to spread apart a little bit, and that strange veil of art opens up. So I guess weird to me is looking so hard at something that the molecules start to spread out and it becomes your own kind of world. For example,
Nice.
Pee-wee Herman, Pee-wee's Playhouse. To me, he stared at early childhood television until the molecules spread away and it reflected through his lens, the craziness. That's where childhood gets weird, where you start to daydream. It's when you infuse the daydream with the daytime and they coexist together, almost like psychedelically.
Yeah, we didn't have like Pee-wee here, but I've been hearing a lot about him recently, you know, because of his passing and all, and comedians talking about them. I'm really into comedy, and did you say how does that like translate to the things you've made? Like, do you infuse them with weirdness, and how do you see like this opening up? Like, I see weirdness as a different way to look into things, like similar to what you said, like the mundane. Like, how can you look this in a way, like in a lens, and you see like other realities or like parallel worlds to ours, and this is like this weird look, this weird vision, like that creators have, that they can look at something that they always have looked before, and then they see something different, something hidden in there. And yeah, that makes a lot of sense to how you talked about this. But can you relate to this of the games you make, like the adventures, like the One of Us or Ninja City or like Darkest Dice? How did you infuse your vision of weirdness into those
So
games?
the Weird Heroes of Public Access was a intentional, specific exercise in the exploration of what weirdness is and what weirdness comes from, particularly in small town America. But I think it can translate to any setting. If anybody was ever a child, I think they can understand what I'll get into here. Weird Heroes of Public Access came from extreme boredom, depression, and the passage, a very slow, monotonous passage of time during COVID, when we were all in lockdown and I lost the physical connection to people. So I had a lot of time to sit and ruminate. And
I remember we started talking on Instagram when you were starting
yes.
to make that, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So basically that's what it was. It's the finding the fantastic within the mundane. I live in the town I grew up in. I left for a while. I went to New York City and to explore what I thought was the real weirdness, the underground. You know, I grew up hungry for the Velvet Underground and basements in New York City and greasy punk clubs and strange characters and all that. And when I went there, I did find some of that, but nothing was as strange or got me as excited as the dark dead end down the street from my house where allegedly something happened years ago, or that pond where allegedly somebody drove this car into it back in the 70s and there might be a body in the trunk. Like the folklore of your local town, you know, every town has some sort of story or some sort of strange character that you remember from childhood, or even now, the guy that walks down the street with the cape on screaming at traffic. Maybe he is a time traveler. It's much more comforting, or you can get through the life, not that I'm avoiding it, but rather than to think about the horror that he experiences due to his mental illness and his loneliness. Maybe make him a superhero in your mind for a day and give him the opportunity in my own mind to be a hero. And that's where public access came from. Public access to me, television, because I have a background. My first career was in television, and I got into it because I used to love to watch the people, and I'll call them this lovingly, the weirdos, the ones that were passionate about niche things, that would spend the time in a small, poorly lit television studio that would only be broadcast out to a couple hundred people, that they would devote that time and energy to talking about crystals or UFO conspiracies or wood carving, you know? So I'm like, I went back to that thing, and amongst the darkness, those weirdos gave me hope. Those people that turned their inside world that many people would make fun of them about out into the world. And the battle between the teenagers making prank calls during their live show, calling the weirdos. I was one of those kids, but that adds to it. That's the other weirdo at home that instead of going out to the party, they're making the prank call to the other person. So now you have this network of weirdness. And then I just added the supernatural on top of it all so that they have something to be heroic towards, to go explore maybe the abandoned factory down the street and get into it. And that's very much like One of Us. One of Us, you play an outcast. I mean, the definition of the 20th century outcast, the sideshow freak, you know, the one that was born different. And I had an affinity towards sideshow culture since I was a young kid, when my father showed me Todd Browning's Freaks. And when we would go to this, they had a carnival in town that had a real live sideshow that I was very fearful of. But when I did some research on that, to realize that although many of those people were exploited at the time, some of them were given very good lives that society otherwise would not have provided them. So they kind of did a rebellious U-turn and said, yes, I am beautiful, I am different, and I'm going to make money off the public, and I'm going to be able to support a lifestyle that otherwise I couldn't have. There's something very rebellious if you take out the exploitation that a lot of it's tainted with. One of Us is that, like, you are the outsider that has the opportunity now to make right with the world and be a hero. And I think Darkest Dice was more of a statement against Christian nationalism or religious zealotry, all that sort of satanic panic stuff.
Yeah, the inspiration is weird itself. Like you're using what was used against us, like for us in a way, like celebrating that in somehow. So that's weird in itself, and it's beautiful.
Out of the Thank you. My statement has always been like I took it from Dog Day Afternoon, Al Pacino. Instead of out of the closets and into the streets, it's out of the basements and into the streets. A generation of creative minds were trapped and criticized in their basements just because they were engaging in collaborative storytelling, one of the oldest practices known to humankind. While other people are being celebrated for beating the crap out of each other and giving each other concussions on the football field. We were the one, the meek, the ones who are into literature and art and creativity and talking to others and solving conflicts. That's our time to rebel.
People would joke here, like we had like a crime, like a murder in the city, and people found RPG books and would blame RPGs and stuff. People would say, "Oh, so let's find a murder and just put some football balls next to it." So it'd say, "Oh, okay, football is making people murder," and they actually do. Like the crowds fight, like the crowd for this team fights with the crowd for this team, and they kill each other, and nobody says anything. The football just keeps rolling.
It's incredible. Right? Role-playing games is something that you cannot do without collaboration and creativity.
Yeah.
It is the cornerstone of it all. And that's, I think, why I love making role-playing games, because yes, I'm putting out a piece of writing, but I always include so many holes because I want people to build their own story and art within those things.
Yeah. Well, you're talking about like the local weird stories and urban legends of place like small towns. Can you share some of your, well, at least one of your favorites with us, like a small story or something?
Sure. So my father was, back to my dad again, was a horror guy, is a horror guy. He was like I said, he had the gravestone business while being a teacher in high school. He worked for a funeral home, and he would be the guy that would go up and pick up the bodies. And then he would do the, reconstruction and the makeup as a 16 to 20-year-old. So he's seen a lot. And we would drive around town and he'd be like, and that's where they found him hanging. It was always some sort of thing like that. But in particular, there's a lot. Let's see. So there was, growing up, there was the Norwich State Hospital, which was a hospital for the mentally ill. And it was huge. It was a campus. And in the late 70s or early 80s, the state cut off all funding and literally shut the door to this and let all the residents out into the general public. What was the big thing for us as kids was sneaking in there at night and exploring, because it was basically they just pressed the pause button and everything was still left there. Wheelchairs, baby dolls, patient files, the weird murals on the wall. So that's that is a literal, that's a mapped out adventure right there.
Yeah.
So, there was stuff like that. I grew up in
Did you ever see anything weird in there? Like anything that you were like scared,
so here's the deal.
Like,
I'm going to admit something.
Imprints on you? Yeah.
No, I was always the driver. I was too nervous to go inside. So I would wait outside in the car for my friends to go in and go out. Now, I myself have never had, as much as I've tried, I have never had a supernatural encounter. I've never experienced the paranormal in terms of ghosts or cryptids or anything like that.
Do you believe in it? There is a question that I would ask in the end of this, but I can ask about other things too. But do you believe in ghosts or cryptids or I don't know, aliens, UFOs or? Sure.
Well, those are all very. I'm going to hit each one in a separate.
Yeah, of course.
I believe that we are not alone, in terms of extraterrestrials or I would say extra.
Alien life, alien life.
Alien life or extra dimensional life, or that kind of thing coexisting. whatever is, I do believe we're being visited by something. I think
Already? Do you think they're already around us?
as I get older, I am more of the idea that we are them, that we are possibly the progeny of something.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've heard about
Possibly.
that quite a few times. Yeah.
I don't have
Yeah,
deep
I mean, kind of makes sense. Like we're like the only living beings here that can think abstractly. We
exactly.
modified environment in a way that it's disrupted to every other animal in here. So that
Exactly.
kind of makes sense. Like
The invasive nature of humankind is making me lean more towards the idea that possibly that we were not meant to be the way we are meant to be in this place. We are, to me,
however, like
invasive
yeah.
species.
However, 92% of our DNA is the same as a chimp, so like, it's very
You never
close.
know. Dr.
Yeah.
Zaius, you never know what could be. So when it comes to aliens, I have no idea, but I
Oh
would
yeah, yeah.
rather, no pun intended, shoot for the stars and get
Oh
as
yeah.
weird as possible, because that's so vast and so
Yeah.
unknown. And when it comes
Yeah,
to
of course.
cryptids,
Yeah.
I love cryptids. I grew up, that was my bread and butter as a child. My love of reading came from finding those books about cryptids, particularly the Loch Ness Monster. That was my favorite as a kid.
Oh yeah.
And I've talked about this on the pizza party. I became so scientifically minded and argumentative that I lost the magic of considering something beastly of that nature, something like truly monstrous, not a new species
Yeah.
of centipede or a new kind of jellyfish, but something truly mystical and mythical and fantastic. So I
Do
will
you look
not
for this
comment.
stuff? Like, do you look for like sightings?
I keep up to
How
date
how
on
do you
all the
pursue this passion of weird cryptids?
cryptids.
Do you? Or?
I do constant Google searches for any kind of new animal life that is cited. And even if it's a garbage documentary, I'll watch it just because.
Did
Why not? I'd
anything
rather
recently
believe.
that you
I'll tell you,
watched it or you read at school?
I went back to the old episodes of In Search of with Leonard Nimoy. It was a show in America in the 70s, Mr. Spock, where it was like the first like investigation of the supernatural. There's that, and then I love, what did I just watch that was very interesting? Oh, the Bridgewater Triangle, which is a geographic it's a bunch of locations around Bridgewater, Massachusetts, that allegedly is home to multiple strange things. And that's a documentary called The Bridgewater Triangle. I find that
Bridgewater
very interesting.
Triangle.
Yep. Now,
Nice.
I cannot forget this.
Huh.
Jogo. Yes. So to answer your question about cryptids and local things that are very strange, I got a good one. Okay. The
I'm
Montauk
excited now.
Monster. Yes, the Montauk Monster. So I live on a coastal town that is on Long Island Sound. So I can just walk down the street and I'm at the beach and I look out and I can see Long Island, New York. Okay, the North Shore of Long Island. So there's a body of water called the Long Island Sound, and the beach. There's in Long Island a carcass washed up on the shore that to this day has still not been identified. Some people think it's a bloated raccoon or possibly like a deformed or a pit bull that had been injured, but still, nobody can find the body. When it was sighted, people took a picture, people came, and the body has been lost to time. Similarly, on my side of Long Island Sound, almost parallel to where the Montauk Monster was found, was a lesser known creature of the same shape, size, description that was labeled the clap saddle carcass. That washed up on shore, very similar. Was it just a common animal that got bloated and eaten, pecked away? But there's no evidence to say yes or no on the other side. But here's where it gets weird, Jogo. in the middle of all this body of water, there is an island known as Plum Island. And it used to be an extension of the United States Army, I believe pre-World War II, around World War II, and it was eventually taken over by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. And it was known for testing of, I believe, hoof and mouth disease on livestock. So they started to do a lot of animal testing out there. And of course, as the secrecy enshrouded this place more, and it became like, like the people that worked there had to be quarantined for months before and afterwards, and nobody really knew anybody that worked there, and it was a no-fly zone. And if you took your boat by there, you'd be trailed. And then there was the reports of the United States, of the Army helicopters that would go over and shoot the deer that would swim across the channel, because they were afraid that because deer can swim. I didn't realize they can swim. That they would shoot them to prevent the spread of any diseases out there. Some people claim this is where Lyme's disease started, because I'm right near Lyme, Connecticut, which is where the name came from. But there's also the rumors of, Dr. Moreau type stuff, and perhaps these carcasses were some sort of experiments gone wrong that have washed up on the shores of both Long Island and of my town. And I used to tutor a child who had the last name Clapsaddle, and I think it was his family that, while strolling the beach one day, came across this bloated carcass of an unknown creature, which to this day has yet to be identified.
Yeah.
When it comes to ghosts, I'm agnostic. I'm agnostic when it comes to ghosts.
I don't believe in ghosts, but I had 2 ghost experiences when I was a kid. Like, I remember them vividly, but nowadays I'm like, that's probably in my imagination or something. But I remember like being suffocated and pulling out of bed and stuff, and wasn't able to scream on anyone. At the same night, my grandmother was sleeping in the same house, had a similar experience, and there was
I have had that
other
experience.
stuff.
I have had that experience, what you described, almost to a T. However, I still don't know if it was a dream or if it actually happened. This happened not in the house of where I grew up, but it's after I moved to New York and eventually moved home. My parents moved into another house, and I had lived there for a little bit. And I had that same experience. I felt that I was dragged off the bed. I was in my early 20s. I was dragged off the bed, that I could not scream, and that I was being choked. I chalked it up, because I ended up back in bed, to a bad dream. But as I spoke to the rest of my family, my sister, who I feel is sensitive, so there's a line of women in my family that are sensitive.
Yeah, my sister says he's used to see things in our old house too, and she would grab like this painting of Jesus Christ and would put right beside her bed, and that thing would go away.
So my sister saw a cloud, like a dark cloud, manifest in the hallway once, and then there was something. She had some sort of dream or a vision where she saw a name. Anyway, we looked into it, and the person that a kid, a 20-year-old that used to live in that house, died in a motorcycle accident in front of the house that I lived in. And for some reason, she connected it to that. My grandmother, every time she dreamed of dark water, we would get a report of somebody that we knew dying. And I think that carried over a little bit to my sister, who is sensitive, and we'll walk somewhere, and all of a sudden she'll become overwhelmed with emotion and saying something bad happened here. I feel a great sorrow here. So that's where I get that. But my father had a very convincing paranormal experience in the desert of Colorado that he claims to have been the actual La Llorona. So he
actually what?
La Llorona, the weeping woman of Mexican folklore and South United States folklore. there's a movie now and it's La Llorona, this and that. We have a restaurant called La Llorona, but my father went to school in Trinidad, Colorado, to college out there. During the late 60s, early 70s. And he got to know some of the locals, and he tells a beautiful story that one day I'm going to commit to paper or to audio recording. But you're supposed to see 3 signs, a white rabbit, a white goat, and a white dog. And as he was driving out with his friends, they experienced all those. They drove the car down into a gulch, and they turned the car off, and they said, La Llorona, if you could hear us, make a sign. They heard weeping, they heard a baby crying, and then ever so slowly their car began to move up an incline without the engine.
Why did they do that?
To find La Llorona. They wanted to experience this. They were, they were paranormal.
I'm so scared of those things. Like, I remember being a kid and all those stories that you would say something in the mirror, and like this lady would come out of the mirror.
Bloody man.
And we had a bathroom in the middle of the hall of the house. Like, the living room was on this side and our bedrooms were on this side. It was a big hall, like a long hall, and the bathroom right in the middle. I remember as a kid, I would open the door to my room and just ran all the way to the living room. And I was in the living room. I would want to go to my room and just ran all the way to the hall to my room. Like, I was afraid of just something coming out of the mirror.
I think that's why we do what we do. Even though I was engrossed with all this horror as a kid, it scared the hell out of me, like deeply, deeply, deeply.
Yeah.
Like Brian Shutter and I, Neon Lord, we talk about going into the video stores as a kid and having what a nightmarish experience that was to be in the horror section, way in the back, and seeing those images. And like, I think that got into my head. And because it became such a fear, and I was fearful of every boogeyman lurking around the corner, that it manifested itself as like, okay, now I have to exercise this from me. All of my music when I was playing in bands was basically ghost stories or murder ballads.
Oh, yeah.
And now all the stuff I'm doing now, it's all the exploration of monsters, the supernatural. It's not your I'm going to go slay. My stuff is not slaying dragons. My thing is slaying the man with the burlap bag over his head that lives in your woodshed. It's all those nightmares.
It's like facing our own stuff, right? Like absolutely. Our own.
It's our own
issues, I guess.
Exorcism.
Yeah. Cool. And how about RPGs? Like, I would often say like RPGs, like it's the weirdest game ever. But do you think RPGs are weird? And if you do, what is the weirdest thing about role-playing games for you?
I believe role-playing games are weird because of its timelessness. It's almost anachronistic. It's almost against the current times because as I said before, it's such a primitive exercise, collaborative storytelling. That's what it's
actually so needed at this time, like this over digital, over information, like something we need so much. Yeah.
That's weird. It's weird that we receive joy or that we commit so much time to something that is seemingly such from the past, going around the fire and telling a ghost story or telling a creation myth or telling a legend. That's what we are currently doing. There's almost a shamanistic value to it, that we are creating worlds that don't exist, and we commit ourselves to characters that don't actually exist in life, but we get very connected to them. I could tell you how every one of my characters ever died.
Yeah, I think that's the connection that attracts us, because even though like we're in the internet, we're talking to each other, like we're social media, the connection has this filter, right? This glass here, and there's all these rules on how do we talk to oppose things, and RPGs are a way to express this, and the connection is so immediate, it's so deep, because we're creating something together. So it's like we're giving hands. Our hands are like just feeling each other. I don't know how to say that in English, but like one finger pass through another and just
Yes.
connects, and the game is online, or the things that are already ready to play, like you play Counter-Strike, or I don't know,
Yeah.
some other game. We don't make this collective creation so much, and I think that's what is attracting us so much, especially in this era that we're all disconnected even more. Every day we are just individuality is something really strong nowadays, and RPGs are something that kind of pushes against that. I think it's something that's communal. The game itself, it requires collaboration because the game isn't ready. You don't buy like a book and you get home and, oh, let's just play this book. No, you have
Right.
to create something together with your friends. So I think that's
I think that,
something.
that's a very good point. When you buy a role-playing game book, you don't sit down and play the game.
Yeah,
People like us, I know
it's
that. I
incomplete.
spend I have to
It's an
read it all.
incomplete
Then I
game.
have to take these tangents and learn more about this monster or this rule or where the writer who wrote this, what was their appendix N, so it branches out into this big thing. Role-playing games are much more than just the act of rolling dice and figuring out if you slay the hobgoblin.
It's a
It's
journey
a
of
world.
self-discovery because it's
It
part of the
is.
game is you. Like the game is only half, the other half it's you playing it.
Yes, it's living literature.
Yeah,
It's almost literally jumping inside of a book and
yeah,
living every single part of it.
and writing it yourself, kind of collaborating with the author. So
Yes.
that's one of the fantastic things, because I think all other kinds of media, you're more a consumer than a collaborator. And an
Yeah.
RPG, even you don't have to write a book, but as you play, you're a collaborator with the author. You're creating
Yeah.
something with them,
As
right?
exactly as you're playing, you are writing a book. Maybe it's not on paper, but you are creating a story.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
love to, I love to think about like the in between games, like the characters are like they're somewhere in some kind of another plane or some kind of void, waiting for that Saturday night for the other person
For that
to
portal to
strike them up
open
again.
and they
Yeah,
live again,
yeah, yeah. We can live
That kind of.
again.
Have you ever seen that series on Apple TV called Severance?
No, I have not.
Severance is like
Is it
this.
the Office? The Office show?
Yeah, the office, the
It's
dark
a
office. Like
company.
you get into the office and you forget everything from outside. And I love
Everybody has been
this.
to watch this.
Oh,
Everybody's been telling me to watch this.
it's so good. Do you like the office? The office, like the comedy show, the office?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
For me, it's like a dark office with horror and mystery and murder, and I love the office. So because
Yeah.
it
Yeah. Yeah.
has those small space of kind of comedy in the office, because they are the office, but there are all those other social issues and even issues with work, and it's very good. But as you said, talk about the characters, how they like turn it off when you start playing, and then they turn on again when you get back to playing. That instantly made me think of Severance. And
Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah. That's come up many times recently in conversations I've had with people to check that out.
yeah. So, what would be like the weirdest RPG you ever played or read? Or
The
that's
weirdest
a tough
one.
question, right?
That is a tough, but that's why I'm into the role playing games that I'm into. I consider myself a connoisseur of strange RPGs. I buy anything strange that I can find. I think my first experience, and it's up there on the list, is a role playing game called Zaserkala. Are you familiar with that? XAS.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I have it somewhere here.
Zaserkala was the
Oh,
first
yeah,
role
right
playing
here.
game. Yeah, that was the first role playing game that I came across that really threw me through a loop. That's it. Look at that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Just the darkness, the grittiness, that was, before Merkborg
yeah.
and before all that kind of stuff. This is the original black metal role playing game. From the art
Yeah,
to the
yeah.
that
It's
that
very
really got
dark.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look at this. The
Yeah,
art
that there's a
there.
darkness. That is a dark
Yeah.
game. I've never actually played it. I've just read through it. But now that you brought that up, I kind of want to go back to it and check that out. and anything
I
by
think they
go ahead.
they have released it here in Brazil. There was a publisher like translating this. I don't know if it's
Oh,
out
really?
already, but yeah, it's a great game.
Um,
Yeah.
the other one that I discovered soon after that, it's not really a game, but a writer, was Zarkov Kowalski. He had a significant
Oh
impact on
yeah.
me, as how I consider.
The guy from Neo Classic
Yes,
Greek.
neoclassic Greek
Right?
revival, a geek revival.
Yes, yes, yes.
My first experience with him was Scenic Dunsmith, which I thought was an amazing idea just in terms of the
Yeah, he
story, but
makes great
making a
modules.
map by
Yeah.
dropping the dice on the table. But then he had like the gnomes of Levnak and 1,000 Dead Babies and like these very, very cool,
Yeah.
strange,
Yeah.
folkloric, and the way he
Yeah.
writes, it's very sandboxy. And that was my first experience with like a sandbox and what you can
Yeah,
do and like how to
that
fill in the
made me
blank.
think about I should invite him here because yeah, he does great, fantastic, weird scenarios and games and adventures, and yeah,
He's one of the guys I really want to meet sometime and thank him. So there's that, but then there's like the really, so I have a gaming store in the town next to me that's very old and dusty. It's in a basement. They've been around since the 70s. And I go through that and I find all the strange manuals or the zines from the early 80s or 70s, stuff that like it came from the late show. I don't know if you ever heard of that.
oh yeah, we had a friend here in Brazil, uh, used to have an event that would happen every month, would be called Get Out of the Dungeon, and was
Yeah.
basically for you to play
Oh,
any game
yeah.
besides D&D. It could be like a dungeon crawl, but it would be something different. So this
Amazing.
guy had this game called it came from the Late Show, like a weird
Yeah.
horror kind of comedy game, right?
Yes, it is. It is. And Brad McDevitt from DC, he did the art.
Yeah,
Brad. Yeah, he had a
yeah.
lot to do with that game. And then finally, I have to mention the one, and I forgot who turned me on to it. If it was Brendan LaSalle or Brian Shutter, it's probably Brian, but it was Alma Mater, which is very
Yeah,
it's a high
I
school role
remember.
playing game where there are rules for everything, and I mean everything, Jogo. From making out with a person to drug overdose, like and the art in there is crazy. That is I don't think that'll be reprinted anytime soon. Way too many problematic topics from a time,
I
a
imagine, yeah.
time that pendulum will never swing back the other way.
Yeah. And if there would be any like weird topic, weird thing you would make a game about, what would it be? Or like adventure
Oh
setting,
boy,
like any weird topic you would like to explore.
that I would like to explore. You know what? This is just off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Outside of my head, because I mean, this is basically what I do. All my games are weird, not like get out of the dungeon kind of thing. But the other life of wrestlers, when the mask comes off, or just it's almost the reverse fantasy, like normalcy. I think possibly the weirdest thing you could come up right now with is an exploration of normalcy, of the
Yeah.
mundane.
Of course, yeah. Yeah. I talked
Grocery
to you about the
shopping,
game.
grocery
The game I
shopping in
wanted to make
2023 during a pandemic.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a game called Lost in the Fantasy World, which basically is like
Yes,
kids
yes,
and teenagers in a fantasy world, like in the old Z&D cartoon. And I
yeah.
always wanted to make like the reverse thing,
The
like
reverse.
Lost in the
Yeah,
real world, and would play like fantastic creatures that are stuck here, and you have to
yeah,
live here, so you have to get a job and do stuff. And maybe the game would be about you trying to get back to your fantasy world, but having to live in the real world. And
yeah. Or
and
finding
and I
that
talked to you
balance,
about,
knowing you'll never do. Yeah, that
yeah,
would be
I
amazing.
talked to you about
Like,
that game I wanted to make inspired by stoicism, like something we have in common.
yes,
And
yes,
I still want to talk about that. And the game would be simply life. Like you would like draw cards, and like it would be events like your boss screwed you over something. How do you react? And you would make tests with the stoic virtues and stuff like that. But the game would be see how you deal with life, the fantastic adventure of life itself. So that's something to explore too, right?
Absolutely. Well, and here's the connection. There is value in this. In the scientific community, in the psychological community has embraced this because they are. I know Yale is doing studies on the benefits of role-playing games for people on the autism spectrum. So this is an opportunity for them to play out social situations in a safe setting that they can possibly transfer over when they encounter some sort of problem solving or tension in the real world.
Yeah, it's reference too, right? My kid has ASD, and I myself I'm starting doing the test next week to see if I am too, and his doctor is almost certain I am too. But anyway, I'm doing the test anyway, and it is like that too. Like we thought about getting him into theater's class, theater.
Yes.
Because it teaches like how to react to situations, even if it's like a play. You're learning like a script, and for the stuff I've read and studied about this, many therapies are like this. Like you learn a script. How do you invite someone to dinner? How do you ask for something? How do you deal with failure and stuff like that? It's something that my kid has always this difficult. So yeah, RPGs are really something that helped me with that. I remember him having really hard time like losing anything. I could play a game, and if it's competitive, and he would lose, he would lose his shit initially. Nowadays, he doesn't want to play anymore. But in RPGs, like I can kill his character, and he just want to play more. So
there is something to be said about that.
Yeah, because the story can go on even if your character die, and yeah. So about more weird stuff.
Isn't that like in general though? We're always preparing a script. Like I wonder. I was actually talking to a psychologist at my school about this the other day. I wonder just how wide that continuum of ASD is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
of course.
Is it? I wonder in 100 years how they'll look at autism spectrum disorder in terms of just general getting on in life. Like to me, when I go to my job, I put on the mask of that person, and I have prepared certain responses, and I have prepared myself to react a certain way, using that emotional compass and considering stoicism and all that to prepare myself for a social situation that I am uncomfortable with and possibly not truly invested in.
Yeah. We're all like this. We're all playing these parts everywhere you go, and there's really few places we can be like without masks. Like being ourselves. And that's one of the things I like to go to Gen Con so much. Like hang out with my tribe there.
Isn't that amazing experience to be completely surrounded and immersed in that environment?
Oh yeah, it's if you have never gone to Gen Con or like any other convention that you can immerse yourself like 4 or 5 days just hanging out with all these creative people and players and gamers and people you feel connected to, it's amazing. I can honestly feel I have been recharged going to Gen Con.
It was like a spiritual
It has been
retreat.
5 years. Yeah, it has been 5 years. And last year I was like in a really bad mood. I don't know, in a bad jam, and I wasn't being creative so much. But after Gen Con, I feel like I have some of my energy back. At least I'm starting to move again.
Good.
It's great.
Good. The world needs you, Jogo.
The world needs everyone, But yeah, it feels great to be able to collaborate again, to give something back to, right? More questions about the weird. Like, have you ever had any like other weird experience, not necessarily with ghosts or anything, like maybe near-death experiences that made you rethink about life, or like have you ever taken psychedelics or anything that changed your way you see reality? I have. I can say I don't feel ashamed about that. I've started taking psychedelics to deal with anxiety, small doses, but yeah, of course I tried like bigger doses and had some experiences, some really great. I have never had a bad trip, but I mean, I just started experimenting with this like a couple of years ago. So yeah.
So I'll start with the first one. I
Near
have
death,
to
yeah.
the near death. So it wasn't near death, but it sure felt like it last summer. And I think I might have talked to you about this at Gen Con, where I became so overwhelmed with anxiety and stress.
Yeah.
I was at the beach with my family, and I had a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and I had a coffee and a Red Bull, and it was about 11 o'clock in the morning. I was reading a book in the hot sun, Lovecraft, of course. So so I'm reading Lovecraft, like, and my wife's like, let's go for a walk down the beach. I get up, I go down the beach, and all of a sudden the world starts to spin around me, and this darkness started to come around. And I said, "Hun, something's not right. Something's not right." And she's like, "Okay, you probably just got up too fast. You're probably overheated. Sit down." But then my throat started to close, and I couldn't breathe. And that's when everybody started screaming. That's when my kids are like, "Dad, dad, dad." And like, we were at the far end of the beach away from everybody, and I passed out. And I had never experienced that before. And that's so
have you ever passed it out before? Or no?
No, not like that. I passed out once, like when I took too much helium from a balloon when I was a kid at the hot dog stand, but I had never experienced anything like that, to the extent where like I had a full-blown panic attack, which I didn't know what was going on. So that was very life-changing to me, in that I realized that there was things I was experiencing or putting upon myself that I could not shoulder by myself. And that's when I started to take antidepressants, SSRI, and see a therapist and take care of my body a lot more, and my diet and all that. And that was a significant transformation.
Yeah.
I stopped.
I talked to you.
Yeah.
I had something similar, but yeah, go on, please.
So yeah, no, and that was that. And that was after a couple of years, like during COVID, where I gave up eating meat. I gave up drinking alcohol, and I thought I was doing okay. All right, here we go. But that was just exterior stuff. I wasn't processing everything that was going on, taking care of myself, taking things way too seriously. So I passed out, ended up in the hospital. They gave me some liquids, and I was on my way. They said it was dehydration and a panic attack. But then I started to take care of my mental health a lot more. So that was weird. And living life now, especially like during COVID, when I decided to stop drinking alcohol completely, that was very strange, because for the first time, I allowed myself to feel every prick of life, every sharp little jab, without any, liquid wall, that I actually had to go out in public and be amongst large amounts of people without that social lubrication. And that was very strange for me. I was a rock and roller. I'd go out, I'd have a couple of drinks, and I'd sing on stage and yell and go crazy, this and that. And I thought that's just what you do. But to cut that, and you realize how inundated society is with that approach to socializing, to do it, like, I'm like, whoa, this is really weird. Not having that insulation, having to actually have sincere conversations unaffected by other stuff. So that was very strange.
And do you, I of course you don't drink, but do you like smoke pot or anything else, or completely sober? That's great.
No, I had my fun when I was younger in college and all that, but right now, like, I'm at this point in my life, I'm 43, and I'm obsessed with this idea that at any time, boom, something could go and I'm gone. So to me, it's a game. How much, and it says, it's my stupid little Instagram quote, like, maximize creativity before inevitable demise. And it's just like,
That's
I don't
true,
have
yeah.
the time. I don't have the time anymore to wake up anxious or sick on a Saturday morning. I got to hang out
Oh
with
yeah.
my kids and family as much as possible. And this is just me.
Yeah.
This is like, I'm not preaching this
No,
to anybody else. This is
that's
me.
of course.
Yeah,
But
that
that's
lifestyle led
completely
me to
true.
have too
I'm
much
sorry, but
anxiety.
that's completely true. Like, I mean, I had a similar experience, and that made me realize we give importance to so much stuff that's not important at all,
Yeah.
and we get so obsessed with this, and we start forgetting about ourselves. Like you were saying, we forget to take care of ourselves or our mental health or actual like
Yes.
physical health. Like we forget to exercise. We think we're fine, and we are not, and that's very very like it's a wake up call when it makes you realize what's really matter, and that's how the people say like the youth is wasted on the young because we're all preoccupied
Yeah.
about all these things we think are important, and as you get older see like no, these things are yeah, that's are nice, but they're not important, like the family, the connections, the people, our friends, our family, and having a place to eat, to sleep, and
Yes.
to live. That's what matters the most, right?
Yeah, I think so. And it's just, I don't regret any of the partying or experimentation or any of that stuff I did, or the,
Oh
the
yeah, of course,
laziness or the
because you learn
unproductive.
about that, you learn so much from this too, right?
Exactly, because I would not. It's like the butterfly effect and Ray Bradbury. I wouldn't go back and step on any butterfly because it could completely
Yeah,
change the course of Joey Royale, and there
yeah.
maybe there wouldn't be a Weird Hero public access if I didn't go out that night, and do something stupid.
During our
Yeah,
show on Goodman Games, like Twitter, during our pizza party, you always share like a small tidbit of wisdom, like from stoicism or something. And how did you discover stoicism? How did you stumble upon it? And what's your relationship with this? Like, it's something very important to me, but I saw another creative, someone that I have a lots of common, and sharing these things publicly made me, very 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 happy. And I'd like you to
yeah.
talk about your relationship with stoicism.
It's kind of funny how it started. So I don't know how old I was, probably somewhere in my 20s. I kept on hearing the phrase existential crisis, existential crisis. Everybody was overusing this word existential crisis. So very innocently, I just looked up what is an existential crisis, which led me to existentialism and Sartre. And I got a book. I stole a book from a library in Brooklyn on existentialism by Jean-Paul Sartre. And I said, oh, this is interesting. This is I kind of like where this is going. I was kind of moving away from my Catholic upbringing, and I was very interested in the concept of free will. I was balancing this, I was very deep into Nick Cave at the time, and his writings, not only his music but his writings. And I was breaking away from my Catholic faith and focusing more on I was reading stuff about, like, the Gnostic scriptures of who is it, St. Thomas. And I just all this kind of strange stuff. And all around, I guess what it boiled down to is, how do you live your life what's the purpose of life? How do you live life as a human, unrestrained by these kind of confines of organized religion that I grew up with? And how do you be your own person, not to fulfill, not so you get a prize at the end of it all, not so you get to heaven? So how do you exist? It was almost a thought experiment for me. How does one exist and get through the world without the promise of the piñata of heaven at the end of it all? Without that, what's the purpose of doing good? And where does free will and creativity come from? Does it even exist? All the stuff of existentialism, the manifestation of the identity, rather than you start with this energy and you follow it. What if you just start with nothing and you have to manifest anything? Long story short, I'm like, okay, I got to move on. I got to see other perspectives. And anytime I looked up anything about existentialism, stoicism came up. And I think it was that Farnsworth book about the everyday Stoic, or the practicing Stoic. I found at a used bookstore, and I found it at the perfect time. The perfect time where
Yeah.
I was very confused, very anxious, very depressed, very, COVID time, away from my family, away from the Sunday dinners,
Oh, so
away from
stoicism was during the pandemic too, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, same thing
Existentialism
here.
was
Yeah.
same. Oh yeah, same with you.
Yeah.
Existentialism was before, like when in my mid-20s probably, and it only tickled my brain for a little bit, but I came back to it during during COVID, and I got
The
into it
pandemic,
hard.
yeah.
Yeah, because I
Yeah.
was buying a bunch of, I wanted to get back to the classics. I think I bought like, what's her name? Edith, whatever, with mythology. And I was Joseph Campbell, the hero's journey. And I'm like, oh, I'll pick up some Socrates, I'll pick up some Plato, and just dig in. And I picked up the Stoic book because it looked
Practicing
expensive, and I
stoic,
got
yeah.
it for $4. So I'm like, oh my God, this is what I've been looking for. This released
Yeah.
me of so much guilt and anxiety, almost like this. It was almost like I took a pill. And
Yeah.
it stuck with me, Jogo. Then I got into Seneca, and then Epictetus, and all those guys, and other realms of Stoicism. And the fact that was, it's like working out. You can't just read meditations and
Yeah.
everything is great. Like, to me, it is a daily
It's a
exercise.
practice, yeah.
It's a
Yeah.
practice. It is. That's exactly it. It's not a philosophy. It's a practice.
Yeah.
It's
And
an
that's what's
exercise.
so fascinating about that. Yeah. It's not like philosophy, oh, let's think about thinking. It's like
Right.
practice for living well, for living
For living
peacefully,
well
for living, yeah,
and really using your free
great.
will and not being confined to the thoughts of others responsibly. It's not a mean practice. It's
You're
not
not
like,
being held, you're not being held by your own thoughts too, because sometimes your thoughts will take you to places you don't want to go. And stoicism
yeah,
helped you get say, okay, shut the fuck up. You're
yeah.
imagining things.
That's it. And now I'm going farther. Now it's almost, I'm going in a different direction, where not different, but like chronologically. Like, now I'm reading about the Socratic method, and just about questions, the importance of questioning oneself, or then in conversation, trying to either help others or get through a difficult conversation, the ability to ask the right questions. And to me,
Yeah.
I think that being an educator, the kids that are going to be successful in 20 years in the world are the kids
Yeah.
that know how to ask the right questions. Because,
Curiosity too. Yeah.
well, curiosity, but also, and I'm getting into
Yeah.
dangerous territory here with you, is artificial intelligence. And but listen, we know Pandora's out of the box, and in the way of artistic ability and create, I'm totally against that. I'll never use it in any of my stuff. But when it comes to like making a living in the future, it's you're going to be able to you're curious. Those that are curious and that know how to ask the good questions are the ones that are going to be on top. I'm not saying financially
Yeah.
successful, but the ones that are going to be able to manipulate the technology so that it works for us more than we work for it.
Yeah. That's absolutely true. Yeah. And creativity in general, will be able to see what else can you do with this stuff, or how can you put this to a good use and not a bad use, That's
Sure.
Yeah.
But asking yourself the questions without getting the anxiety nibbling at the brain, getting the
Yeah.
thoughts out, focusing into questions that are solvable, or at least provide you a path to either get through a creative struggle or a personal struggle.
Yeah. Do you have spirituality? Do you believe in gods, or do you have a religion you believe in?
That's a tough one. And I struggle with
If
that
if it
very
if it,
much.
yeah, if you don't
I
want to
I
answer,
I
then like we can ask
No,
someone.
I'd love to answer it. It's just,
Ah,
to me, it's a
okay.
very, I have it. I grew up Catholic, but very accepting, in a very accepting progressive family that,
Okay.
like, you know,
That's great.
LBT
Yeah.
stuff was always not accepted but embraced in my family. You know, I had gay relatives that were embraced. Their lifestyles were embraced, and they were involved. Like, they would decorate. My uncles, Sal and Dave, who were a great inspiration to me. They were part of they were out, but they were decorating the church. They were organizing things. So it wasn't until I was older till I realized that the dogmas did not suit my worldview, and that what I was experiencing was really cultural, it wasn't. I can't say that I really grew up Catholic. We went to church, but I wasn't raised within the dogmas. It was almost of a cultural thing. To be an Italian American in New England, that's kind of how you grew up. But as I felt like a traitor to my friends and loved ones and to the world when I considered the specific dogmas that were hateful. So I removed myself, and I don't call myself a Catholic anymore. I do love the teachings of Christ if you look at them for what they really are. I think they've been horribly manipulated by organized religion to carry out the politics of whoever has the money. But I mean, love others as treat others as you would treat.
Yeah.
If you want to be treated,
Catholicism has a lot in common with Stoicism. I think they kind of, Catholicism grew like in the middle of Stoicism, so they borrowed a lot of the principles from there. Yeah.
I wanted to tear myself away from the hateful nature of some of the dogmas that I found out about, but at the same time, I wanted to lead myself away from the carrot on the stick approach, where do good so you get good in the end. To me, I wanted to remove that out of my thought process. That's why I say, I'm agnostic in a lot of ways. To me, it doesn't matter. I spent so much time trying to figure out if God is real or not, or who is God, or what is God, or what is the person, where I wasn't living life to its fullest. I was always thinking too much or having too much guilt if I'm offending some supernatural force. So to me, I am not going to focus on if God exists or not. I'm just going to try to do the best I can to everybody on earth. And if there is something at the end, I don't think that great hum or whatever that great orb or energy is will be offended that I didn't do it in their name, that I did it because I did it out of love, which possibly could be what that great hum is upstairs, is just of love incarnate or whatever. So it's just that thing. So basically, I don't have a practicing religion. I am not an atheist. I do believe there is something greater, but with everything going on in the world, just as a human, I really don't want to attach myself to organized religion, because I think it's been weaponized to such an extent that we're really at a precipice right now.
Yeah, that's very similar how I see it too. Like, I grew up Catholic. I went to a Catholic school. Before I was sent to military school. I was in Catholic school.
Yeah.
I am an atheist nowadays. If I have proof otherwise, I would change my mind, of course. But I mean, at least this idea of a benevolent, all-knowing, all-powerful God, for me, it's incompatible with the horribles of reality. So
I'm struggling with that as well. I'm struggling with that as well. The great benevolence when there's so much suffering, and some people say, well, it's to show, you have to have winter so you can enjoy summer. But at the same time, I have a hard time picturing a benevolent force enacting such or allowing for such suffering.
Starving babies. I mean, if that happened only with people that
babies,
paying for something, like no, but it happens to completely innocent people. So no, I can't accept that excuse. For me is unacceptable. But I mean, I'm all for like spirituality that helps you feel connected to the world, because I kind of feel connected too, even though there's God. But I mean, we're connecting somehow, this consciousness, this ability to communicate with one another in ways that nobody else can, and experiencing, studying the world, the universe. And I like this vision of like we are the manifestation of the universe for self-discovery, you know. That's like a cool way to think about this kind of things.
Yeah, I mean, it's yeah, the death of the ego, you know,
Yeah.
and removing the guilt from living. Like, I really dislike the concept of original sin. That's
Yeah.
such a power move. That's
Like
such a power
you're
move.
yeah, you are born, you're already a sinner. So you owe us stuff. You like have to
So,
ask
yeah,
for
so now you
forgiveness.
work for us. Now
I
you work for
didn't
us.
do anything. I just got here.
Yeah. I mean,
uh,
Catholicism
what about
probably is the best way I'm
conspiracies?
still alive.
Oh yeah.
You know, it's probably, you know, it got
Yeah.
me, my Catholic guilt got me out of a lot of bad situations probably when I was younger. I had a very good experience growing up in the Catholic Church. I was not exposed to some of the horrors that some of the people I know and love were
Yeah.
exposed to. Um, but that doesn't mean I'm going to subscribe to that, you know, to sign the check, because, you
Yeah.
know, like Jesus said, the church is within yourself. So, you know, there are some good things that
Yeah.
you can pull.
That's other thing that never made some sense to me. Like if God is everywhere, why do I have to go to the church and pay them money? I can just pray
On
to
the
God
nicest
here.
day
Why
of
do
the
I have?
week when all the good cartoons are
Yeah,
on.
yeah. I mean, yeah, all with cartoons. I can play games with my friends. Why do I
Yeah,
have to go there? That doesn't make any sense. He's here. He's not
yeah,
here.
yeah.
So yeah. What about conspiracies? Like, do you believe in any of them, or at least you're interested in them? I mean, they're great gaming material, but I mean,
That and
anything like you.
that's as far as I go. I look at conspiracies. Once again, it's a different time, and conspiracies have taken on a whole other
Oh
life
yeah,
now, that are no
yeah,
longer the fun X-Files stuff that we experienced in the
yeah.
90s, you know, that were intriguing, and that, you know, now it's become once again weaponized.
Shit
And
got serious, right?
yeah, it's too serious. But I mean, my whole, still, like, WHPA is all about, you know, small town
Yeah, yeah.
conspiracy and who's the puppet master. So I love that kind of stuff. And I love, you know, I just got a big delivery. I hit the jackpot with a bunch of what is it? What is it? Bear with me for a second. I just watched the documentary on it.
Sure.
The Church of the Subgenius. That's the kind of stuff I like the satirical conspiracy kind of stuff. The Church of
Oh
the
yeah.
Subgenius. You know,
Hmm.
and for fun, I have a large collection of I have a big conspiracy library. You know,
Oh
reptilians,
yeah.
uh, all that kind
Oh
of
yeah.
crazy. The
That's the
reptilians, and, you
inspiring
know,
stuff, and like like
it
the
is,
stuff you can
and
put
to
in
me,
games.
yeah, exactly. And that, to me, I have a lot of my life is based around like conspiracy stuff, all my projects, and I use it just for that,
Yeah.
as creative fuel. Yeah.
Yeah, secret societies that are
Secret
staple in
society,
role-playing games. They
absolutely.
are they are conspiracies by nature.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, like last question. What weird thing that isn't real, of course, but you would like it to be? Like if you could choose any weird thing, any cool, fantastical stuff that you like to be real, what it would it be?
Without a doubt, the Loch Ness monster. The Loch Ness monster, because it would
Why?
truly be
Yeah.
fantastic. Well, first of all, it was my obsession as a kid.
Yeah, yeah.
And if it was in the paper tomorrow that they had found Nessie, I would be so happy that I was so wrong, that the adult brain started to eat the 12-year-old brain when I became so overwhelmed with objective scientific, okay, there's not enough room for a breeding population, or is there a breeding population? There's not enough food stocked in the loch for this thing to do. Could there be one? How could there only be one legendary creature? I want news that they found that one mythical creature that doesn't have a breeding population, that really can't exist in that environment, which would be the proof of magic. Not spirituality or
Yeah.
God or anything like that, but magic, true legendary. There are magical, mythical beings out there. I think that would be so cool.
Yeah, that would be cool. Yeah. we have talked about with Don Stroud about he kind of have a similar idea, but he wanted to have those lost world kind of places, like a
Yes.
lost
Yeah,
island with
exactly.
dinosaurs and stuff, like a
Right,
Hollow
right, right.
Earth.
Well,
That's
that's
one
the
of
thing.
my
So now,
favorite type of
yeah,
settings.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Hollow Earth and Neon Lord got me into, the restricted Antarctica, the
Yeah.
pastures and all the unknown creatures. And my wife is telling me about the hole in China where it goes so deep, and there's all these animals and creatures that have never been discovered before. Like the Earth within the Earth. Very
Are
much like
those
that.
real? Like, they really exist, or like
There,
those are
there is.
like
I don't know.
tales?
I don't know. We just
Okay.
got into the conversation over the weekend, so I haven't been able to take a deep dive into exactly what location
Yeah,
she
that
is
sounds
talking
sounds
about.
interesting. Yeah.
But like the Solomon
Okay.
Island
So,
giants and stuff like that. I love that kind of stuff. The
yeah.
Nephilim. Yeah.
So Joey, like we got into the end. It was really great talking to you. Do you have anything like you wanna say to our listener? Anything like you wanna promote? Uh, Joey has shows on Wednesday on the Goodman Games Twitch channel. They're always fun. They're always wild, and they always have a really cool tidbit of wisdom for you to listen. So I would recommend you check that out. But Joey, do you wanna have any last message for our weirdos out there?
Stay weird. Stay weird. I write that on a lot of the stuff that I send out to people and little messages. Stay weird. The world needs weirdness. The world needs your individuality. And as weird as you think you are, I guarantee you, somewhere very close to you, there is somebody equally as weird who would really enjoy your company. So don't give up. There's too many of us out there. You are not alone. And embrace your weirdness, because other people need your weirdness as inspiration and as support. And Diogo, you have been my weird inspiration for a very long time, even before we started talking. When I first picked up Sinister Swords and Dark Streets and all that stuff, I said, this guy, I got to meet him. He's speaking my language. There is something simpatico here with this guy. So you got to keep up the work that you're doing. And I love this show that you're focusing so much on the weird, because I think we overlook that. We just assumed, oh yeah, we're all weirdos. But to dissect what is weird. You asking me that question about what is weird, I'm going to be thinking about that for a month now. That is something I've never stopped. We just live it. We just live it. We're too busy living the weird stuff. What is this attraction to weird?
Yeah, because we are all like the weird. And I had a friend saying, "Do you think that's a cool theme for a podcast? Wouldn't it be like exhausted in like 3 shows?" No, because everybody is weird differently, and but that makes us all the same too. That's what connects us. Sure. We always thought, oh, nobody understands me because we are weird. But as we see each and everyone's weirdness, we see how similar we are, even though we are like completely different. Like we are into different stuff. But it all connects us, and that's kind of something I want to celebrate here and keep it weird. It's a fantastic way to end this.
You got a guy in Connecticut, you got a guy in Brazil, and the one thing that brought us together was weirdness.
Yeah.
Thank you so much
for this.
Exploring that, you then, as I'm going to keep on thinking about this thing that you did with your hands. As we explore the weirdness, you realize how similar we are, and there is a very comfortable normalcy and comfortability within that weirdness. So thank you for that experience.
Yeah. Thank you for being here, and thank you for sharing your weirdness with us. And let's hope more people can do that and be proud of their weirdness. So, as Joey said, keep it weird. Thank you for listening to Weird Games and Weirder People. If you'd like to keep up with the show, please subscribe to be notified when we release new episodes. If you'd like to support us, please leave a review or head on to code-fi.com/WGNWP. See you next time, and remember, weird is the new wonderful.